At any moment, the House will vote on President Trump's stimulus demand to increase direct payments to Americans from $600 to $2,000. President Trump signing a massive COVID relief and government spending package into law last night after railing against its price tag and pork barrel spending with complaints like this.
I am asking Congress to amend this bill and increase the ridiculously low $600 to $2,000 or $4,000 for a couple. I'm also asking Congress to immediately get rid of the wasteful and unnecessary items from this legislation.
Trump taking issue with spending like $40 million for the Kennedy Center in Washington, $1 billion for the Smithsonian Institution, $7 million for reef fish management, and $25 million to combat invasive Asian carp. But tonight's vote won't address the pork Trump wants to cut and faces a tough road ahead in the Senate. Republicans oppose adding more to the debt and say the spending should be targeted to people who actually need it.
It's terribly untargeted, right? Why would we be sending $2,000 to people with a six-figure income who've had no suspension, no reduction of their income at all? This money isn't sitting on a shelf. We're going to print it or we're going to borrow it. And I think that the aid should be much, much more targeted. It should be targeted to people who've actually lost their job.
We're in this situation of crisis because of Nancy Pelosi politicizing this, her refusal to deliver COVID relief, because most of the provisions were very bipartisan. Whether it was the Paycheck Protection Program, whether it was support for hospitals or vaccination distribution, those were bipartisan agreements that we could have gotten done earlier this year had it not been for Speaker Pelosi.
Sean Duffy, I want to start with you. As a former congressman, part of the issue here is that in an unprecedented year, with an unprecedented pandemic, Congress seems to be operating as usual. And every congressman that we talk to on this network says, oh, here's the problem and here's the issues. But can you break down for viewers right now, what is the problem and what is the issue from your insider perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's great to be with you. So the problem is that we're doing a COVID spending bill right at Christmas time when this Congress is about to end. In less than a week, the new Congress is signed into office. This should have been done in September or October, where there was plenty of time to get a bill done. And Republicans rightfully are angry that there's so much pork in this bill. You just talked about some of it. And Toomey was spot on when he says this money isn't targeted. We don't want to help retirees who are out on the golf course. We don't want to help, folks who haven't lost any income because they're government employees. You have some people who haven't worked for the last 5 years. All of them are going to get a $2,000 check. That doesn't make sense. And so I think you see this divide in the Republican Party, especially tonight when this vote is going to come on board. And I think the backdrop of this, Emily, is very simple. Republicans want the government to open. We don't want to give checks, or they don't want to give checks to the American people so Newsom and other governors can keep their economies closed. We want to get people back to work and making their own income, and more money in handouts lets more states stay closed down for longer periods of time.
Marie, to Sean's point, so if the issue here in part is not just spending, but it's also saving, it's also cutting taxes and the like, what are your counter arguments to that? And also, how is Speaker Pelosi's avert politicization of this spending bill, how is that defensible?
Well, Donald Trump's the one who refused to sign the spending bill, and by delaying, he actually meant that millions of Americans will lose at least a week of their unemployment benefits in the bill. But Trump has put Republicans in a really tough position here. Tonight, the Democratic-led House will pass a bill that gives Americans more relief. The Republican Senate, led by Mitch McConnell, now has a choice to make. Do you say no to the American people? We think you can survive on $600. Especially when there are 2 Senate seats up for re-election, 2 Republicans running in these Georgia runoff elections in just a few days. So Donald Trump has put Mitch McConnell in a really tough position here. And the administration isn't helping. Mike Pence is skiing in Vail, Donald Trump's at Mar-a-Lago, and Steve Mnuchin, the key negotiator for the administration, is on vacation in Mexico. The Democrats in the House are back at work today. They are tonight voting, as you mentioned. They're going to give the American people more relief. We don't want to give handouts forever and ever, certainly, but this is a pandemic that we have never seen the likes of in this country. And right now, the American people need that money, not just for themselves, Emily, but to help the economy. The economy will do better if the American people have a little bit of relief as we see this vaccine, the end on the horizon so soon. This is a tough place for Republicans in the Senate to be in, to say, sorry, American people, we don't think you deserve more money during this crisis.
Lisa, to Marie's point, she's right that it could have been a lot more a long time ago. But for, according to Speaker Pelosi, quote, Republican obstructionism, even though we know there was a lot of politicization and complete stalemate on her part throughout. What is your response to that characterization?
Well, Emily, we had this bill months ago. We had this bill back in July. If you look at the HEALS Act, which was a Mitch McConnell and a Republican bill, it mirrors the bill that was just signed into law. So we could have had this deal months ago, but Nancy Pelosi held out for maximum pain on the American people and to deny President Trump a victory. And to Marie's criticism of President Trump, he has run two of the most successful government programs we have ever seen in American history, both with PPP. It has saved something close to 50 million jobs, and as well as Operation Warp Speed, which has now brought 2 vaccines to the American people, which is actually a way to solve the crisis that we're facing so that we can go back to our lives, that we can live as normal, just like we did before. And what have Democrats done? You look at liberal leaders, whether it's Governor Cuomo, whether it's Gavin Newsom, shut down the economy, lock down the economy, kill the middle class, kill small businesses, and over what? Indoor spread in New York is 1.5%, yet they're crushing small businesses, crushing restaurants when the data, the science doesn't even back that up. So those have been the solutions and the responses from Democrats. Lockdowns, shutdowns, take away your freedom, or deny the American people the aid that they need for political purposes to try to stick it to President Trump.
And as we're having this conversation, the House has actually begun voting on this bill, so we'll keep you posted on that. Tyrus, my question to you is about the future. And if in this really insane year, if everything proceeded as normal and we're still having the same argument back and forth, will it ever change?
You know what, that's an amazing question. I mean, I guess the good news is that when we specifically need something, we can keep it to 2 or 3 pages, like when they tried to bring this up the $2,000 stimulus check, opposed to the actual bill, which was just a scotch under 6,000 pages that needed to be read in 2 hours. This is classic, holding it to the wire. Pelosi did a really good job of waiting to the last minute to where if anybody opposes it now, they look like the bad guy. So, you know, this is, again, we're just going to still with obstruction and not focusing on the importance of the American people. That's why it's so important that we need term limits so we can stop this madness. They weren't thinking about the American people when they were stalling. The bill is blown up. The president took one look at it and was like, this is ridiculous. Give people more money. Let's get rid of the pork bellies. But now if we stretch it out and actually take a look at it and be fiscally responsible, we're hurting the American people. Why? Because they basically, it's an old football term where they ran the ball and ate up the clock and then gave us this, here you go, and if you don't sign it, if you don't like it, you're hurting the American people. And I think we all see exactly what this is. You don't need glasses to see what's going on here.
Amen.